Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruber. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I am Kathy Gruber, and we are excited to once again have not only one phenomenal guest, we're really rocking it here on Fire. We got two phenomenal guests, Fernando, Parnes, and Kelsey, Daly. Woo! We're so excited to have you guys. So welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast. So why don't you, I'm so excited to have you guys on because your backgrounds are amazing and what you're doing is spectacular. So tell everybody listening at home or at work a little bit about your guys' self. I love both your backgrounds, so we'd love to share that with everybody.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My name's Kelsey, here with Fernando. We started BestBeing. So we started BestBeing while we were in college studying together. My background is in neuropsychology and business, and Fernando studied artificial intelligence, computer science. Yep. So we started BestBeing because we wanted to bring wellness to more people in the world, because it's hard to find help and it's hard to find something that works for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, when you're a computer scientist and you're faced with any kind of problem, you tend to just try to, find a solution through some sort of technology. So that's kind of how we start, how BestBeing started. But, before we get into that, I'll just touch a little bit upon why this stuff matters to us, so much. Because of course, technology is being used to solve a whole range of problems. And, we chose to focus on wellness specifically. And I think as with most, passionate founders, because we have a personal connection, to the problem. So I used to weigh about 450 pounds less than 3 years ago. And it was, obviously when you're dealing with that sort of overburden, things tend to get pretty nasty, regardless of the situation. I was actually very lucky to be, I'm 6'3". So the term was that I relatively carried it well. So I was still able to have my mobility and I was still able to walk around, but I was 23 with, high blood pressure. I had pre-diabetes. So I had difficulty, already with insulin problems at that point, all because of food and an unhealthy relationship with food. And never could find a solution, and actually used our algorithm. And I hamster, tested myself. So I found a couple of services. Full disclosure, the first one was like just a nutritionist, didn't really work. And then the second person I talked to sort of keyed me into metabolism, metabolism testing and metabolism training, where a lot of people don't realize that, your metabolism is actively working against you when you're dealing with weight loss. So there you reach a point where your body, and it's a very dramatic effect because your body thinks you are dying. It's protecting itself as much as it can and holding on to all of those calories to the point that you're losing, very, very few calories a day, no matter what you do. And it's a very difficult situation. So when you start looking at it from that perspective of, what's the root cause, something that doesn't always get looked at, right? What's the holistic cause of the problem as opposed to the symptomatic causes of the problem? You end up seeing that there is something you can do. And, 200 pounds later, healthy, good blood pressure, good insulin, all of that stuff. So, very, very blessed and feel very proud to be here. But it did show me that you don't need to go through that many years of frustration and, of feeling that you're unable to do anything or act. There needs to be something in our world today, right, that gets you there quickly. So.
Oh, and 200 pounds in 2 or 3 years. That's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
That is amazing.
Thank you.
So good on you, mate.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's life-changing. It's the only way to,
Sure.
Yeah, it's life-changing completely and 100%. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a little bit about my personal story in regards to why I chose to focus on wellness. I come from a very rural town that didn't have a lot of wellness services. And I really, had a hard time finding help when I needed it. And when I was 14, I was in an abusive relationship with an adult man and I became pregnant and I had no idea what to do, and it does have a happy ending. You know, I went through an open adoption, and Reese, if you're listening, hello. One day he is the sunshine of my life, and you know, it really became such a great, you know, one of the best aspects of my life. And I know a lot of people aren't lucky enough to have that situation, you know, where, you know, something like this could ruin someone and, you know, very stagnate you for life. So I really want to find people that are struggling and, you know, don't have the access to get the support they need and, you know, bring it to them. So that's really my motivation for doing this.
Yeah. So how did BestBeing come about? I mean, you guys shared your stories, you were friends in college, then you said, hey, why don't we do this thing? I mean, like, what was the impetus? Yes, the personal stories, but why this? Why BestBeing? And then tell us what BestBeing does for people.
Yeah, so I guess started off with our third co-founder, Patricia, actually came to me and talked about she wanted to start an institute with professionals and people interested in the well-being industry and get some academics together and, you know, kind of have like a brainstorming institute, you know, where we could talk about these kinds of things. And she knew my background in neuropsych and then my interest in this. So I started doing the market research and realized there's a huge hole in the market where there's no matchmaker, there's no one creating a whole community of these providers and making connections with people. So I found a lot of people give up during the search, and we wanted to make the search as easy as possible.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the sort of initial reasons why we did this is because when we were researching the science of Wellbeing Institute, that was the name SOBI, we realized that, you know, as opposed to having another institution where people are going to get together and think about what to do, we really needed something that got people to do what they were thinking about, what they wanted to do. So we really, we thought we needed to build a marketplace that would connect these services. But not only that, you know, the big issue if you're thinking of just a marketplace, I mean, I can go on Google, as any of us know right now, and look up wellness services, and I'm sure I'm going to pop up with a few suggestions. But what we realized is that through our initial market research for SOBI was that most people were giving up at that phase where they had no idea what they were looking for. So it became an extra burden. It became another problem. Let me give up because of that perception that it's not something that is vital for your day-to-day life. You know, you can just deal with whatever problems you're having. That idea of just kind of like, whatever, I'll just deal with it is very prevalent. And we wanted something to disengage people from that. So, you know, I started thinking about that problem. Again, computer science, my background is relatively strange. I started in film and still very interested in film. You know, love analyzing and breaking it down, and still write some papers on different movies as a hobby. But you know, I started with that more sort of artistic, creative leaning, and I got into video game design based on that because I was like, hey, I like video games. It allows me to create something right now. You know, that's cool. Fell in love with the programming aspect of it, and then, you know, here we are today, computer science with a focus in AI. Who would have thought? Certainly not me in 2014, I'll say that. But, you know, from there, I started thinking, how can I throw what I know at this? And we came up with a recommendation engine, which is, you know, an engine that uses artificial intelligence in the least, I'll call it the least intrusive way possible. So you have to tell us what we can use from your information in order for us to actually use it, and create a system that guides you through that process. So that's where
well, and I think this is great because actually what you just talked about is with technology, it's a beautiful thing, right? I mean, you know, Kelsey, you talked about how, you know, growing up in a rural area, you didn't have access to it. Well, now with the internet, with technology, regardless of where you are, you can go out, you can Google stuff, you can, you know, find things. I mean, between Google and YouTube and some other stuff, you can get a pretty good education. But one of the problems that you guys just hit on that we see too is there's lots of knowledge out there. But when we have so many different choices, a lot of times we feel overwhelmed. And when we feel overwhelmed, then we just stop. because we don't know what to do. There's so many choices. We're just stuck, right? And I remember that one of my sisters, her husband was in the military, so they were overseas for like 4 years at the very small little PX, where they could buy stuff. They had very limited choices. And I remember her telling me when they came back to the US and she went into the grocery store, she just stood there in the chip aisle, bewildered. There was a whole aisle of chips and she was just frozen. She didn't know what to do because she had like 150 choices instead of 5. Yeah. And I think sometimes, like you said, we all know that we need to, do better with our wellness, but there's so many choices, there's so many providers. A lot of times we just get stuck and we don't know where to start to begin with, right? So having a marketplace like this, and I'm guessing too, people are kind of vetted. So that they're not some, crackpot person in their basement, who's trying to give. On, so I mean, well, you're a crackpot, but you're not in your basement, right?
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Let me out a couple times.
See the window behind.
Because it gives people, and like you said, so maybe talk a little bit more about, when somebody comes to your site, how do you help them kind of filter through so they can figure out what's best and what's going to work for them, right? Because, Fernando, when you talked about losing weight, the first one didn't work for you, but the second one did.
Right. Yeah. So, no, happy to talk a little bit about that. That's actually one of the, one of the things we're really proud of is that we realize that, for the same way that everyone's wellness is different, and this is a computationally difficult problem, is that wellness data will act differently for everyone, right? So that means that the data that I produce regarding my wellness it could be that, from, let's say, like, I fill out questionnaires and I'm personally very open about my wellness and my problems, which is actually, we find, not the case subconsciously with a lot of people, and I'll explain that in a second. But let's say that I answer questionnaires very truthfully and I'm very open about it. That kind of data that you produce from that will be extremely valuable in order for us to make a recommendation. However, as I just said, a lot of people, if you ask them, if I ask them, do you have an overwhelming well-being issue in your life today? They'll say no. Or, I'm fine, or maybe I feel a little blue or something. And what we've noticed is that you start showing these people wellness content, right? You start showing these users wellness content, and we say, hey, this is some content you might be interested in, like an article or a video, and just pick one that interests you, watch it, and tell us if it interests you and if it's something that you like. And we found that a lot of people will start gravitating to one type of content again and again and again. So, one example is a user who said that they absolutely never felt depressed. And they were like, I know this for a fact. I'm a happy person. Everyone says I'm happy-go-lucky. And that was interesting when I read the transcript of his questions, is that he kept saying, other people say I'm happy-go-lucky. Other people tell me this and that. But all the content he consumed was related to bipolar depression. Every single thing he gravitated towards was related to bipolar for like 95% of the content, right? And when our system analyzed that, of course, the first thing that we're going to think is like, hey, maybe this is something you should explore, right? This is something that that clearly interests you at a deep level, and however, you claim that there is no relationship between you and this, so maybe that's something to explore.
But it's interesting because even his linguist in it was a tell. Other people say I'm happy.
Right.
That's not what he's thinking, right? And so again, that's a linguistic tell that he doesn't think he's happy. Other people think he's happy, right, but he knows he's not happy.
Absolutely. So by combining all of these forms of data, and that's how we do it, right? We do questionnaires that are put throughout the platform. When a user comes in, they have a section where they can just continuously fill out questions about themselves at their own pace. If they want, we collect whatever data you allow us to collect from your behavior on the website. And again, it's all opt in. We think that that's very important in today's world, that you have control over your data. And, I say this, I feel like a lot of CTOs might quake at saying this, but your data is super valuable to us, to you, and not like in a esoteric, metaphoric way, like money wise. Like your data is valuable financially and valuable for every other reason. It's the most valuable thing that you have and that we have through you. And that's the reason why we want people to, trust us with their data at their own pace, because they need to be seeing the same amount of value that we are from their data, right? And the way that we can do that is that by the more data you give us, the better we can do with the recommendations, the better we can do with your experience on the platform. And it's up to you to stop it or keep going as much as you want. So one of the things that we're doing, for example, for providers, starting last week, actually, so one of the revelations that came about from CES is that, one of the problems we find for providers is that a lot of times, people struggle to really talk about themselves. How do I best display myself publicly, my service publicly, so that I can reach the widest audience? Marketing of oneself is an extremely problematic and difficult thing. So what we've been doing is that we can now, if a provider is interested, we can schedule an interview, a video interview with them, or they can just send a video answering some questions, film themselves and send it to us. At the end of that interview, we transcribe the entire interview. It contains, we ask you several questions about your service and about your profile. And then that gets used to actually make your public profile, give you a suggestion. You obviously get to approve it or disapprove it, make suggestions, make changes. And then we can create a profile for you very easily. And all of that data from your interview can be used to make recommendations and to find you customers as a provider. And what we found is that gives us tremendously valuable data very, very quickly, right? Just by doing even what we're doing right now. It gives us tremendously valuable recommendation data because we're able to speak. It's much more natural. It's much more fluid than when you're typing out a questionnaire. There's much less barrier, to being open about what you're saying. And we found that gives us tremendously valuable data very quickly. So that's really what we're focused on doing, is finding the best ways to make these matches and continuously iterate on that. So always make that better and better. And our platform really allows us to do that.
Yeah, that's so cool. So you touched on two things that I think are so vastly important. One of which is providers not having the ability to market themselves. I, with a colleague, put together an entire program called Market My Practice, specifically for that reason, because you have these amazing health practitioners who don't know how to reach their clients, reach their patients, reach their, and I just got a call from American Association of Family Physicians, and she was telling me that's one of their pain points is they don't know how to talk to the media. They don't know how to talk to their patients about, they have the knowledge, but not the communication. Right. So I'm glad that you guys are doing that. And if you let the clients or the potential customers watch the videos, that's good too, because if you're about to go to hypnosis with somebody or interact with somebody, you want to know kind of what they sound like and what their speaking style is, and you want to know what that personality is, and the video is going to tell them that, just like a dating video, as opposed to I filled out 5 questions. And then the other thing is we vastly underestimate our health. Yes. One way or the other. Either people are like, I'm so healthy, and they're falling apart, or they think they're an absolute mess and they're actually okay. So there's very few of us in that middle lane where we're like, I kind of have an ache and pain, and we don't know how to language our illnesses. We don't know that some of the symptoms we're experiencing aren't normal. So when I go through the warning signs of stress and say, these are not normal, people go, really? I shouldn't have my shoulders up to here and not sleeping and not pooping and not yelling at the cat and not, it's like we shouldn't be doing those things. No, those are not normal. And our body seeks homeostasis. So it makes those things seem like, well, of course this, I'm over 40. Of course I feel like this. It's not normal. So the fact that you're asking again and again and looking at those almost more unconscious tells as to what services they need, I think is brilliant, because we don't often know what our problems are. We can see everybody else's. We can tell you everybody else's problems, but not our own. So, I can tell you everything that's wrong with Jason.
And there's a lot. We'd be here for a long time if that were the case. Well, and I think because one of the things that I can't remember if we brought up already, but I know we were talking about before we started recording is this fact that not everything is going to work the same for everybody. Some things are probably going to work better for some people than others. I mean, Kathy, you brought up about like the hypnosis, right? I mean, I've done that. I do a lot of self hypnosis myself, and there's certain people's voices and the way they do it that I prefer. Other people I do not, right? And that's okay. It doesn't mean that they're not good at what they do, but they're probably not a good match for me, let's say. So, how do people, because I know this is probably one thing that as people are listening, they get told all these things. Oh, you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do this, right? And everything is not right for everyone. So how, maybe as the person receiving the wellness, how do we start kind of figuring out, or maybe questions to ask ourselves to know what's the right pathway for us to go down, maybe to begin with?
Yeah, I think one really good thing is self-experimentation. Delving a little deeper in things that you didn't really know you were interested in before, and and this sounds cliche, but you really don't know until you try. So definitely, like, one thing that I wasn't very familiar until about a year ago, hypnotherapy, and then I started doing it myself, just with YouTube videos, and even now I'm finding which voices I like and don't like, as you say. And so just really getting to know yourself and playing around with what's out there has been that's what works for me. And I know that won't work for everyone as well, though, as we say.
Absolutely. I think one thing that is incredibly important is we talk often in our company. This is actually a metric that we track, which is the serendipitous connection.
Yeah.
This is something that actually originated at Amazon, where they wanted their customers to feel a feeling of what they called serendipitous discovery. Which is when you see something and you're like, wow, I didn't know that I needed that. But now I do. now I realize I need it. And the thing about that, when you're relating to wellness, is something that we've touched upon already, which is the hesitation people have whenever they're dealing with wellness topics, or a lot of people have when they're dealing with wellness topics. As you said, Kathy, there's very few people in the middle there that realize, hey, I have a few aches and pains that I need to work on. Either, it's usually on an extreme. And to anyone listening, that's perfectly okay to feel that way, because you've been told to feel that way. Pretty much by every major institution and society in general. It really tells us to feel that way, right? Either you're happy or you're not, and there's always extremes. Extremes are very popular, I would say, to this day, still today. And so I would really urge people not to ignore that initial feeling, right? So when you're given a recommendation on BestBeing, you're given, it's not one person, because we found that, just as you said, Jason, we don't want to tell people, because they get told so much what to do and who to talk to and etc. So we don't want to do that. We want to give you suggestions, recommendations. We take that word very seriously. We're giving you a recommendation. So, you get 5 recommendations. You can look through them. And I urge you that if you feel a connection with the profile, what Kelsey said, try it out, give it a shot, and like maybe see if that is a connection that you can make. The example I gave earlier, I tried, when I ran myself through this algorithm, and this was like way earlier when this was not as good at all. But when I ran myself through it, the first person I talked to wasn't a fit. I felt like it might be, and it wasn't, and then the second person was. So that's, and it became life-changing. You really only need one life-changing experience in order to have a life-changing experience, or rather, I'll rephrase that. You really only need to get started, because once you start with the life-changing process, it kind of doesn't end and sort of continues, and it's a very nice journey forward. But that idea of connecting and going for it, I think, is an important one. And another thing you mentioned, Kathy, about just allowing providers to put, video, put more information and have more detailed profiles. We're finding that that's very helpful. Of course, it's up to the provider once they've recorded an interview with us, if they want to put that on their profile. We highly recommend that you do, because it does drive much more engagement. And we find that it's, one thing I wanted to touch on, Jason, was you mentioned verification and, how we verify our providers. we find that that's a big step towards getting people to trust in your service, is if you're able to put yourself out there, you know, with a video, people are able to connect with you. However, verification is also an important thing. We can't and don't want to just limit our platform to licensed practices, because again, we find that that's very limiting, and there's usually an organ behind saying, hey, you get this license, you know, this practice get this license, this one doesn't, and you never really know. You know, as we talked about before, Jason, there's plenty of non-clinical wellness solutions that will work perfectly well, and
if not better,
better, and have a direct impact. That part is something I really want to make clear to anyone listening, is that it's not an esoteric, in the future your life will be better. No, there's a lot of these services will have an impact today or tomorrow or next week. And the people you're talking to can tell you, they're experts, and they can tell you how it will impact your life. So that's why, you know, we think that it's important that it's not only clinical, it's, you know, non-clinical, any kind of solution, a very broad range. And we verify based on, we do very thorough research whenever there's something that we don't know that comes into our platform. So most recently, one of the popular you know, practitioners were financial advisors. So of course we'd heard about financial advisors. I personally hadn't ever talked to a financial coach who offers, you know, not like bookkeeping, but teaching you about finances and about how you can make your financial life better. So we wanted to look into that. We wanted to make sure that it was something that, you know, would be a good fit for our platform. That was something, I guess the word legit is the, you know, something legitimate. And we went ahead and did some pretty thorough research. You know, we'll conduct interviews. We'll try to go to places of business around our locations and where other team members of ours are, just to make sure that it's something that is a good fit for our platform. And then at that point, you know, we'll onboard you. Of course, you have to have some form of identification just to make sure you're a real person. And we'll onboard you, and then it's up to the customer. You know, of course, if people have very bad experiences with the service, they'll leave reviews generally to reflect that that's the case. And if something starts flagging our system, we'll go and investigate and make sure that, you know, everything's above board. But it really is a question of flexibility. We don't want to limit this to, you know, license. Of course, if you're a licensed therapist or a licensed practitioner, we'll display that on your profile. Yeah. However, I do urge people to open their minds and you know, look beyond that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, of course, I'm not a licensed practitioner. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a social worker. I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm a coach. I've got all these things. And it's great that you're offering those, because so often, I mean, coming from the alternative medicine background, there are things that some people don't, homeopathics or herbs, they don't want to deal with that. But there are other people who that is in their system of thinking. So I like that you guys are offering a lot of different options, because also I've had people say, oh, well, you can't do deep tissue on me. Well, why? Well, I had it once. I don't like it. Well, maybe they did it wrong. Maybe your body was in a different place. Maybe they didn't know what they were doing. Maybe. And so I remember working on this specific woman. She's like, I can't stand deep tissue. It hurts. I don't like it. I went, okay. So I did the massage. How's the pressure? Oh, it feels great, blah, 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 blah. Get to the end of the massage. I said, how was that for you? She goes, that was the best massage ever. And I said, that was deep tissue. What? You know, and I was kind of like, but the person who did it before did a terrible job at it. So it wasn't that she didn't like deep tissue. It was that she didn't like that person's deep tissue. Or with wine, I can't stand Chardonnay. Have you had every Chardonnay ever made? No. You don't know that you don't like Chardonnay. You didn't like those ones you had. You know, you might have a style that you like or a system that you like. So I love that you're giving everyone sort of a buffet of options. That's the way I function with healing, is give everyone a buffet. If you don't like it, don't take it. You know, get a clean plate every time and try something new. Yeah.
But the important part is you actually have to try.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And I think this is one of the things, you know, that you said before when you were talking is I think a lot of people, you know, and hopefully it's not anybody who's listening to us, because obviously they know, right?
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, you can do all the research, you can get all the knowledge, but until you get your butt off the couch and actually do something or try it out, you're not going to know, you know, because again, you can, all the book learning we might kind of learn or have the knowledge, but until you actually do it and get the experience, you're not going to get that transformation.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think this is too where a lot of people kind of from an alternative medicine, from a law of abundance, a lot of people kind of miss this point is they think they can just sit on the couch and think it and I know it, so it'll happen. It's like, well, that's part of it, but you got to get up and take some action, because if you don't take some action, you're never going to know. Right. If you know, like you said, with Chardonnay, it's not my favorite, but man, I've had a few Chardonnays that were like, that was amazing. Yeah. Right. It's not my go-to, but I would be silly to say I don't like any Chardonnay, or that doesn't work for me, or deep tissue doesn't work for me. Try it out a couple times, and then you kind of know, and then move on and find something that does actually work. But you actually have to take the action.
Yeah. So in the last couple of minutes, because of course we've once again blown through an entire show. So Kelsey, before we got on the air, you were talking about ROI and with companies, and I've run into this where, you know, they're like, oh yeah, you can come in and do a stress talk, but they want to see the dollars, they want to see the value in that, and to just say my employees are less stressed. In some organizations, that doesn't do it for them. They want to see what is that financial benefit. So we talked a little bit before we got on. I'd love to hear what you were saying, because I think it's important for everyone to know that, yeah, there is a financial benefit to having healthy staff, to having happy, healthy employees. So what, go through those numbers again for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So the workplace wellness industry is starting to grow. And worldwide, it's a nearly $50 billion industry. So definitely some space to work with, which is great. About half the companies in the United States do have some sort of employee assistance benefit program for their employees. North America is the leading countries in this space. But for the ROI, it appears that every dollar that a company spends on their employees in terms of their wellness, they should get between $5 and $10 back, because having happier, more productive, less stressful employees really is your best asset. And
yeah, and I can actually touch a little bit, just an interesting statistic to finish out here. So one thing, and this is not bad news at all, but the unemployment rate in the U.S. is 3.6% right now, right? Extremely low. But that should tell employers a couple of things, right? It should tell employers that you no longer have the ability to just keep your employees no matter what. I mean, they have options, and employee turnover is growing, you know, year over year, and it's going to keep growing as unemployment goes lower. I mean, we have more options, and everyone does.
And there is also recruiting for your best talent is always an issue, especially big tech companies.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. You want to keep your employees happy, and you want to keep your employees engaged with your company, because that's going to drive, it's going to drive employees to want to stay with you, which is anyone who owns a business knows that that's one of the biggest pain points, is both hiring and training new people. That's always going to be a big pain point. And the other thing that number should show you is actually the amount of people that are in the workplace. And that's very, very important, because right now, globally, only 9% of employees have access to a wellness service at all. You know, in the US, even though it's 52% of workplaces that offer that, only 5 to 10% of employees on average are engaged with the workplace wellness program, which shows you that the workplace wellness programs that employees are engaging with right now are working for some people.
Yes.
Right. And you really want it to work for everyone.
Yeah. A lot of companies will offer a gym membership or something like that. And that really only impacts the people that are already going to the gym, and that would do that. So,
exactly. So you really want to offer your employees flexibility, because this is costing you as a business owner a lot of money, actual money every year, you know, in terms of lost productivity, but also in employee turnover, and in the fact that, again, you're losing the ability to have your employees work at their best in the most positive way possible, right? In the sense that if their lives are going, if their personal lives they feel like are going well and in a trajectory that they're happy with, and if they feel like that coming from their workplace especially, they have so much reason to give you as much as they can. They want, you know, and that really reflects directly in your bottom line. So we like to say that bottom line represents a business's health, which is why we understand why businesses have to focus on it the same way that if you were becoming sick, you would want to do something to fix that, right? And if a business is seeing a deteriorating bottom line, they want to do something to fix that so they can stay alive. So we understand that businesses need to focus on that. But we're trying to say that by focusing on wellness and focusing on your employees' wellness, you are focusing on that. And there needs to be a shift for people to see that.
Well, and I was going to say, because having spent decades in corporate America, just to bring up a little nuance with that, and I think why so few people are taking advantage of them. You know, you use the term EAP, Employee Assistance Program. Mm-hmm. Most of the corporate EAP programs are talk therapy around financial issues or maybe depression. And there's a huge stigma that goes along with that. So companies offer it, but if you use it, everybody looks at you like you're some weirdo. Yeah. And so, you know, it's for, in my mind, as far as what a lot of employers are doing right now, they think they're helping, but they're not really helping, because like you said, it's a gym membership, it's maybe some talk therapy, and that's it. And they think, and because of the stigma around it, you know, we've got to change and make it culturally acceptable for people to actually utilize these services and not think that these people are like, you know, there's something wrong with you, Jason, right? What do you mean? You need to, you know, meditate during the day. You must not be a strong performer, right? We got to get rid of that culture and let people know it's okay. And then also allow some of these alternative things in there, because one fit, like you said, a gym membership, it's 95% of the people don't care.
Yep. Exactly. And I just really very quickly want to just touch on something you said that I think is so important, which is that idea that when you offer one service, if your employee uses that service, they know, you know, that they're using
the service,
like talk therapy, right?
Yeah.
So even if you as an employer don't care about that, which you probably don't since you're offering that service, it's very tough as an individual. Even for me, I've been in that situation where you don't want to admit, I mean, you're in the workplace, right? You need to show, at least most people think you need to show professionality, and you can't show that their weakness, which itself is, we don't need to get into, but you know, that's one thing we wanted to offer with BestBeing, is that when you use our platform, your employer does not have direct access to the kinds of services you're using. I mean, of course, you know, if you're using our platform and they're paying for the platform, they can tell that people are using the platform. And we want them to be able to tell that, because of course we want them to see they're getting a benefit from it, but they don't know exactly what service you're using, because that, I mean, that doesn't matter to anyone except for yourself.
And legally they shouldn't know either.
Right.
Yes.
There's a whole HIPAA. Yeah.
When you use that example you mentioned, I mean, it's a logical flaw, right? I mean, if I offer only talk therapy and my employee uses the service I offer, I know exactly what it is that they're doing. And I don't think we need to know that necessarily.
Well, and just the final thought, and I've talked about this with health all the time, is it's pay now or pay later. And so many employers, they don't want to spend the money. They don't see the ROI. It's like pay now or pay later. Because if your staff is not getting what they need from you, and like you said, mentioning that unemployment number, which I hadn't even really made that connection of, there's less pool to draw from. You want to keep your employees. Because the same way you want to keep people in your rental properties, because if they keep leaving and you keep losing that money to onboard them, to put the ads out, to waste the time, to have, you know, Joe in accounting have to do 15 people's jobs because you can't hire somebody else to help Joe. Joe's a very hard worker, but I mean, he gets tired. So you want to make sure that everybody around him is doing their job and being happy doing their job. And you and I talked, the three of us talked way back about Glassdoor and how now you can leave reviews about your employers. And there's a couple companies in Santa Barbara that used to be like the tops to work for, and now they're having trouble retaining employees because the culture has changed and the new CEO, all they care about is the bottom line, not involving the staff. So it's important to keep yourself healthy and to keep those around you healthy and happy, more productive. There's a bit of cohesion in the organization. So I love what you guys are doing. So I absolutely love it.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you.
I'm thrilled to be a part of it because I'm listed as a provider. So
that's fantastic. We're so happy that you're a part of it.
Yeah, we are honored.
Yeah. And I know I'm, you know, only let out of the basement a couple times a month to see. Clearly, you guys didn't vet me very well. I'm teasing. No, it's an awesome site. So what is the best way for people, both providers and people who are seeking out your services, to reach you guys and get on the platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually starting today, if you go on the platform, there's two things you'll see. You can either sign up and create a profile, start investigating the platform. One thing that is very important to mention is that, because we work on transaction fees, you're never paying for anything unless you choose to use a service. So, please go on, explore it, check it out, so that you can, get familiar with what it is that we're doing. Keep in mind that one of the things that we really want people to be aware of is that as an early stage startup, one thing that we really shine at is customer service and feedback. So please send us all of your feedback, and we can actually have a direct impact on the platform at this point. And for whoever sends us feedback, there's some Amazon gift card stuff that is going to be occurring with that. I will let you'll actually be getting an email about that today, Kathy. Yeah. So, and then the other thing that you'll see on our platform is a link to schedule an interview call with one of our team members. So we really do recommend anyone who is interested in doing that, if you're a client, a business, or a provider, because just by doing that call, we can really help you, both create your profile, generate the data that we need in order to make those recommendations. And for providers especially, it can create some really, really interesting marketing material, which you're getting for free. I mean, at the end of this, at the end of the interview, once everything is transcribed, you get the video, you get the transcript, both unedited and edited for an interview format. Because we know, again, marketing yourself is tough. It's a hassle, and we want to help as much as we can. So we really incentivize people to go check out the platform, bestbeing.com. And either create a profile or book a call, or book a bunch of calls, as many as you want. Our team wants to talk to you. We want to learn about you. We want to learn about your service, about you as an individual, about your wellness, about your business, and about your business's wellness.
Yeah, and about what you need help to make your business run better. And we will send you
to make yourself run better.
Yeah.
That's the other, that's the other thing. And I'll just leave off with, we really urge people who, you don't have to have a problem. and something doesn't have to be wrong for you to want to improve yourself, or for you to want to focusing on your wellness. You don't need to let it get there. Kathy mentioned something very important, which is paying for something. Either you pay for it now or you pay more later. I'm Brazilian. We have an expression which is o barato que sai caro. So that means the cheap that comes out expensive. That is something that people should keep in mind. If you save now, you just pay more later. It compounds in the same way where if you invest now, it compounds to more positivity later. So I really do urge people to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Jason?
Very true. Very true. Yeah, lots of stuff going through my mind, but I know I've kind of hit up on our time window, I think, so.
Nature of the beast.
Every time.
Well, thank you guys so much for this opportunity and for having us. I mean, really, it's tremendously gratifying to see that this environment is just filled with people who want to bring this to, bring out this message
and support each other. Yeah.
And support each other. I think that's why the wellness community is so cool, right? I mean, in the end, we are naturally geared towards supporting each other.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, so everybody go check out bestbeing.com, get signed up, schedule your call, get your videos on there. Yeah, that would be fabulous. So, all right. Well, I'm excited because I'm actually going to go finish filling out my provider profile. I'm Kathy Gruver. You can find me there, but you can also find me on kathygruver.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be found at jasonmefford.com. So thanks, everybody, and we'll catch you on a future episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.